Hi there, I'm Tom Wood, your automotive tailor at Suntrup Automotive Group. Today we start with the 2024 Nissan Z, otherwise known as the RZ34 or the Fairlady Z. I cannot tell you enough how excited I am to finally be talking about this car, because I'll tell you what, in my eyes, Nissan was the first to properly bring back a retro design with modern engineering injected into it. This car is genuinely pretty from all angles. The performance it offers is fantastic, and the value it has in the modern sports car market cannot be overstated. To an enthusiast with a trained eye, you can clearly tell that Nissan is paying homage to the heritage of the Z name, an icon of the Japanese car brand. Starting at the front, you've got several elements that look like they've actually been pulled straight off of the old 240Z. The grand nose design, the large grille, the headlights are basically LED versions of the ones from the 70s. Even the Y shape of the bulge in the hood is inspired by the 240. As we move over to look at the side profile of the car, it becomes absolutely stunning. This is my favorite angle to look at the car from. The silver roof element right here is directly inspired by the color and shape of a katana's sword blade. The multi-piece kinda look and design of the exterior door handles hark back to the original 350Z. On this performance trim Nissan Z, you get these really nice 19-inch wheels that look aftermarket from the factory, which is, in my opinion, the highest praise you can give any OEM wheel. As we move to the back here, we can see that the taillights and the rear fascia is clearly pulling from the 300ZX. And I think Nissan has come up with a design that makes the back of this car look timeless.
I mean, just look at this thing. Clearly, this design is timeless. In fact, I think this design is so timeless that it will be even considered good looking 15 years from now. This, I can tell already, is going to be a future collector's item.
I love how sleek it all looks. I love how it's simple, functional, but when you look at it, you feel like you've gone back in time. In a good way. If you want to open the rear hatch to check out the storage space, the release button is actually inside the rear Nissan emblem. Interesting that they placed it there and opted to put the reverse camera beside it. Overall, though, it's not that abrasive to the look of the car, just an interesting detail I thought I'd point out. Inside, it's very simple. You've got lots of space for luggage on your grand tours, space for groceries, or fairly large purchases. You can see a pretty big crossbar right there as well. That helps with the chassis rigidity.
One thing I also really like about this current generation of the Z car is that they use the original Z font for all of the Z badging. Usually with a new generation of Z car, they come up with something new, but this pays tribute to the original.
And when we close the hatch and look closely at the bottom of the center of the glass, you can see text that says, "Since 1969. This refers to the Z first going into production in late 1969 for the 1970 model year. I think it's awesome that Nissan is clearly very proud of their heritage. I mean, apart from the Skyline name, Z is one of the most historically significant names to Nissan's brand. Whether we're talking about Prince, Datsun, or the Nissans of today, the legacy is huge. If we move back to the front of the car, we can finally start to talk about what really makes this car special. This is the first Z car to have a turbocharged engine since the 300ZX. And boy, is it a good one.
You might recognize this engine as the VR30 out of the Red Sport models of the Q50 and Q60. It's a 3-liter twin-turbo V6 that puts out 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. In the current Nissan lineup, that's mind-blowing for a few reasons. One, this car is rear-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive like the GTR, so it's going to be a little racier. And on top of that, it's offered in a 9-speed automatic configuration and a 6-speed manual configuration, whereas the GTR is only an automatic 6-speed. The reason why I think that's also fascinating is, in case you didn't notice, this car's engine is called the VR30.
And for you astute folk out there, you'll have probably noticed that the engine name starts with VR. The engine in the Nissan GTR is called the VR38. The engine in the Z is a part of the same family as the engines in the GTRs.
So when you think about it, this is a baby GTR, but with a much more exciting recipe. Rear-wheel drive, auto or manual, and same sort of engine, and it actually sounds very similar. It actually sounds like a hybridized version of the 370 and the GTR.
And get this car produces as standard 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. The first Nissan GT-R produced about 470 horsepower. That's not a big power gap, especially when you think about how the Nismo trim of the Z produces 420 horsepower. As we close up the engine bay and move to the inside of the car, you'll see that this particular performance trim Z is equipped with the 9-speed Jatco automatic. You can find this transmission in some pretty nice cars, such as the 2021 Aston Martin DBX and the 2022 Mercedes-AMG SL. This car does have a couple driving modes, Standard and Sport Plus for Nismo models.
But again, in the modern climate with everything going on, the fact that you can get a 400 horsepower internal combustion engine with a 6-speed manual, brand new, straight from Nissan, that's pretty incredible.
Because this car is a performance trim car, it does come with a limited slip differential, which in my opinion is almost a must-have in any modern sports car. The weight distribution of this car is good, but a little heavier in the front due in part to the new forced induction engine. 57% of the car's mass presses down onto the front tires. So let's talk about what you have to work with on the inside of the car. Two things really pop out at me when I first get into this thing. The 3 pod-mounted gauges in the center of the dash. You've got turbo pressure, which is cool, turbo speed, which is really cool, and battery voltage, which is neat.
I personally would have wanted something like oil temperature or oil pressure, but the symmetry makes it all worth it. It's very pleasing to the eyes. And we can't overlook this beautiful steering wheel. It's only offered in this car. The Nissan Z is the only car in the Nissan lineup that gets this steering wheel, and I love the way it's designed. The 3 spokes are perfect. It's perfect for grip, it's perfect for driving.
I love wheels like this because you can grip them with your thumbs and rest your hands at the 9 and 3 position, which is the best way to do it.
One of the interesting things about it that I think is really cool is that apparently Nissan and their designers pulled inspiration from the design of the steering wheel in the R32 GT-R. I can kind of see it.
On the performance trim, you do get GT-R-derived shift paddles in auto-configured cars. On top of the storage in the back, I'd say this car is great for road trips because you've got 2 cup holders, storage behind the seats, and adaptive cruise control. The performance gets leather, heated seats that are powered for forward and backward movements. This car does have a couple USB outlets and a 12-volt outlet in the passenger footwell, ideal for hooking up a radar detector, which I strongly suggest having in a vehicle as stout as this. This car has the Bose stereo as a performance trim car and also includes navigation. You can even go into Google Street View in case you want to scope out your destination's parking situation, so it's less of a problem to solve once you get there. This car has the performance-only 9-inch infotainment screen. Lighting up the cockpit is the digital gauge cluster, and because it's digital, it is as configurable as a Rubik's Cube. But if you're like me, then you'll be spending all of your time in sport mode, because that places the tachometer at the center of your display and even gives you a motorsport-style shift light.
And before we move on, there's something I want to touch on that I think a few people have seen as points for criticizing this car or are drawbacks that I think are actually advantages. Now, obviously a lot of people have pointed out the fact that there are a lot of things in this car that have been carried over from the 370Z, but there's a good reason for that. They've decided to allow a whole bunch of stuff in the car to be trickled down into this current generation of Z car to, for one, reduce development costs and also make it so that the price point for this car is competitive and also affordable, hopefully, for their target demographic. This allows them to build this car completely in-house without having to partner with other brands like how Toyota did with the Supra. But even so, because everyone likes to talk about it, let's talk about some of the things that this car has inherited from its predecessor.
The parking brake, which is a great inclusion for enthusiasts because these are much more fun than an electronic button. The center switches for the heated seats and the tailgate. The climate controls were carried down.
But that's okay because look, you can control the cabin temperature, the climate, the AC, whatever you want to call it, using actual buttons and dials. Not an intangible screen, not touch screen, not motion. You're not using the force or magic or anything like that. You just get to use dials and buttons, and I think that's always a plus and a point towards the manufacturer when that sort of decision is made. Because we all know Touchscreens, when you're trying to change the AC settings, can be really distracting and sometimes dangerous, and usually very unintuitive. It feels good to have buttons that you can move around, switch to better settings, without actually even having to look away from the road.
The stalks on the steering column are off of a 370, the switches on the door handle, pretty much the entire door panel, save for some trim, is off of a 370. It's also got the same door handle and same door air vent, but I'll tell you what, I'd rather have familiarity and a great car at a great price than a great car that's unfamiliar and costs a not so great amount of money. The traction control button is also very prominent to the left of the steering wheel, which I can appreciate. I imagine owners will be smoking their W-rated tires pretty darn fast. That way you can put on some Pilot Sport 4S's or Super Sports on there or something Y-rated, even if you aren't actually going to be going 186 miles an hour. And last but not least, launch control. It's actually very simple. Switch to sport mode, fully depress the brake pedal, pull back both shift paddles, press down on the accelerator all the way, and then when you're ready and the car has built up some revs and boost, boom, release the brake pedal and you'll be flying.
This car can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.3 seconds. That's pretty good acceleration.
Let's go for a drive. I'm especially excited to try this car out, not just to experience the VR30, but I really want to showcase what the 9-speed is capable of, especially for anyone out there who is a little unconvinced. All right, the 2024 Nissan Z. My main curiosity here is two things: the VR30 and the 9-speed transmission. I really want to see how it drives. Ooh, that's smooth. Put it in the manual. Ooh, those downshifts are crisp. Oh, those downshifts are perfect. Okay, so we're in manual mode right now. I'm gonna keep it in second. Here we go. Oh, that gearbox is amazing. Oh, then we put it back into auto and it knows exactly what to do. Those gear changes are so smooth. Those gear changes are amazing. I love the shift light. That's really cool. That sounds so good. That gearbox is actual cash money. That Jatco 9-speed transmission, that sounds pretty mint. We're going to take it over here, we'll do some free revving, then we'll get back to the drive and we'll take it back to the dealership. So far, A+. That's interesting. It kind of drives like a 10-speed Mustang, so it's always trying to find a different gear, which is fine. But the downshifts are so good. Those downshifts are just spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. I'm not trying to look cool wearing sunglasses, I just want to have good vision. It doesn't buck. The car doesn't buck as you're downshifting. That is what is the most incredible thing to me. Because it's not a dual clutch or anything like that. It's a synchronized automatic. But it doesn't feel like it. All the way up to 7,000, that's pretty cool. Yep, it's a nice car. It's a very nice car. I love the cabin as well, and I love the look of the pod gauges, and I like the red. I know you can also get it in a bright blue, but come on, it's a Nissan. You gotta have red. I'm even dressed for the occasion. There's enough feedback in the steering, it feels really good. I kind of like, actually, that one of the gauges here is battery voltage, so it always looks like you're going to max on something. See the boost building? It's cool to have turbo speed. That's such a neat idea. Not just pressure, but turbo speed as well.
You get all kinds of action in here. And of course you got the great gauge cluster. It feels so planted too. No wonder why they put this gearbox in the Nismo. It makes sense. I get it now. After feeling those downshifts, this gearbox makes perfect sense. And they even tuned it for the Nismo, so it's even a little bit better in that car. I can't complain about that at all. Now I want to drive the Nismo. An extra 20 horsepower isn't really gonna, you're not really gonna feel that. But it's the tuning of the drivetrain and the suspension. That would be the neat stuff to feel. You guys got to tell me what you think of this interior. I like this interior. This is a modern car and it looks like this. I think tuner cars are back, baby. Tuner cars are back. And I think manufacturers are starting to recognize that, and clearly I think Nissan is right on the money with this thing. I like how the throttle is soft, but it's not too sensitive. The throttle, ooh, it's nice and quiet in here. Good noise deadening in here. The throttle is nice and soft. You got really good brake feel. Just enough resistance, but it's not super touchy where it like bucks you as you hit it. The only way to make that happen is by, you know, slamming it, which I'm not gonna do, but this is a Grand Tourer car. Like, it's actually legitimately comfy. It's also really hot in here. We got a Talon over there. That's a pretty Talon too. I would buy this car just for those downshifts. Are you kidding me? No one told me the downshifts were that good. That's unreasonable. They've got no business making a synchronized automatic transmission drive that nice. That shift light is cool. The only downside is I can't see how it looks going down the road. That's the main downside. I can't see, especially those taillights. I love the taillights on this thing.
Well, there you go. That's the Nissan Z. I feel like I've almost talked myself into getting one. This thing really is a blast from the past. It's like a modern 4K remaster of your favorite 70s action movie. Nissan really outdid themselves.
Why don't you come on down to 6000 South Lindbergh Boulevard at Suntrup Nissan and ask for me, and let's get you into this thing. And hey, we got more on the way. And if you want something just a little bit more special, a Nismo or something with certain interior options, certain exterior options, I'm sure we can find something that's right for you. These cars are priced pretty reasonably now. These cars aren't getting marked up like crazy like how they were before. And I think we could probably work something out. I'm Tom, your automotive tailor here at Suntrup Nissan, and I hope to see you soon.